Hi, everyone. It's Shelly Azen. Looks like we got a bunch of people calling in early. Good for you. Extra credit point, gold star. We have a lot of people registered today, I'm sure, because of our friends at Wawa being the guest speaker. So we're just going to hang on as people start to dial in, and I'll check back in a second.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Keith.
Is that Hope? Hi.
Talia's here. Hi, Talia.
Hi, Shelly.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks, honey.
I'll be in the other room.
Okay, honey.
Hi, Allie.
Wow, all my favorite people.
How are you?
The good news, Allie, is you weren't on mute when you said that. So excellent.
I had myself on mute.
Hi, everybody. It's just 4 o'clock and we have a lot of people registered for today, and I don't see that same number yet in the call. So we're just going to wait a minute or two as per usual. While we're waiting, feel free to pour yourself a cocktail if you like, or anything else. A Wawa coffee, perhaps. All right, let's see how we're doing. Just wait another minute, then we'll get started.
Did you get my email, Shelly?
Yesterday, I think you sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, thank you. Was I supposed to respond?
No, I just
Okay.
thought it was amazing. I just thought it was amazing.
Oh, was it? It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna read the Viktor Frankl book this weekend.
I ordered it. I told you I have it. Yes.
Well, I'm ordering it, but it takes long right now that I don't want to wait. So, but it's one of those books that you want to have a copy of, kind of like The Art of Happiness.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Again,
Yeah, of course.
That was a great gift.
All right. Shall we start? Everyone ready? Michael, you good?
I'm good.
All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to week 4 of HR at Home. Good to see some new faces and always good to see those that are returning. Glad that you find it helpful, and it's always good to connect with the fellow HR professionals in our community. So as usual, these are our objectives, a chance for us to stay connected and see each other and talk to each other. As usual, we'll have Keith Black start with a few minutes of legal updates. So anything that may have changed from our last conversation. We have a very special guest today, and might I add, the most registrants that we've had so far, and I'm sure it's because of that wonderful Wawa brand. So no pressure, Margaret. You're amongst friends. And then remember, yesterday was Cinco de Mayo, so I'm carrying over my margarita cocktail, and feel free to do the same or whatever you feel like drinking. And with that, we'll get started. So I'll turn it over to you, Keith.
Great, thanks, Shelley, and welcome everybody. Glad you could all join us this week. Pretty quiet week on the legal front, relatively speaking. We haven't had that flurry of new laws or regulations come out, but a few things that I thought I would just highlight for you guys. The first is related to the CARES Act and the PPP program. The question was asked to the Department of Labor: if a laid-off employee is offered their job back at the same pay and refuses it, does that count against the loan forgiveness? And the answer is no. If a return to work offer is made by the employer in good faith and is documented, and the employee rejects that offer, that will not count against the employee's loan forgiveness. So that's an important clarification that the Department of Labor came out with a few days ago. The second also relates to the CARES Act, but as it applies to unemployment. And part of the law provides for work sharing and an opportunity to get more people back to work by maybe offering reduced hours so two can do the job of one. And in that regard, the Department of Labor clarified that if an employee is put into a work share agreement under the CARES Act, it will not prohibit them from being eligible for unemployment. It's a way to keep people employed, a way for the employer to keep people on the payroll. And in some cases, with the $600 additional weekly unemployment benefit, they may end up getting more than if they've been working full-time, as we realize has been a problem in some of this. But it's been clarified so that there's not a question that this will not restrict them from the ability to get unemployment if they're put into a work share situation. And then the third one was I'm not sure what that one was, employees qualifying for paid leave after mistakenly being denied. Yeah, there was a case, Discount Tire Centers case out of Anaheim. In that case, an employee was asked to have leave of absence under the employee or the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, and the employer was under the mistaken impression that the employee had to be able to prove that they were diagnosed with COVID-19. And for that reason, because the employee couldn't prove that, they denied the leave, the paid leave, and they reached an agreement after a Department of Labor investigation that the employee would be paid for 2 full weeks and that they would comply with the act going forward. It's just to highlight that the Department of Labor is getting involved in monitoring the situation now. That original or initial period where they weren't going to enforce it is over. They are getting involved in enforcement actions now, and you need to be aware that they're going to come after you and they're going to investigate if employees are not being treated the proper way under the law. So that's really it for this week. Like I said, nothing too major, nothing too earth-shattering has come out, but we'll keep an eye on things and continue to update when they do.
Great, thank you, Keith. I forgot to mention, sorry, at the kickoff, you have the ability to unmute yourself during this session, so you can ask questions. We certainly have a chat feature as part of the Zoom controls. But before we move on from Keith, are there any questions on the legal updates? You can just take yourself off of mute and ask. All right. With that, then I'll turn it over to Michael Harden from Juno Search Partners. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm turning over to Vicki Sack. Sorry, to Vicki Sack from Juno Search Partners. Sorry. Right?
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we at Juno are really, really thrilled to
to know Margaret Dinneny at Wawa. She's their Chief People Officer. We've had some really interesting conversations the past week or so regarding some things that Wawa is doing. We thought it would be really interesting to our community, being that Wawa is such a known brand in our area, in our region. And a few years back, the PSPS organization had a really popular program where one of their leadership individuals from their leadership team gave a presentation on Wawa. It was very well attended, really fascinating about their culture and, you know, employee engagement and how they all have goose blood and people just really believe in the organization as a whole. And people are so passionate about Wawa. Obviously that's telling in our registration numbers. So Margaret and Michael and I had a really good conversation the other day. We found some fun commonalities. Margaret and Michael both graduated from Kutztown University, fun fact. And Margaret has been with Wawa as their Chief People Officer since November of 2017. She covers all aspects of HR, from talent acquisition to leadership development, comp, retirement benefits, HR systems, communication, engagement, you name it. Prior to that, she spent about 14 years with Target. So another very well-known organization. And I think she has a lot of interesting stories to tell and some things to share about how they've managed through this situation, a lot of it due to the culture that they've built and how that's helped them get through this, and it's going to take them to the other side. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michael Harden, my business partner, who's going to have a little bit of a Q&A and a conversation with Margaret, which I thought would lend itself to some interesting stories. So Michael, do you want to take it from here?
Thank you. Kutztown University, which we call the Harvard of Pennsylvania. I'm sure everybody agrees with that. Margaret, do you agree?
Of course.
So when we spent some time on the phone call, we actually talked more about the 3 bars in Kutztown than we did about anything else. So we'll get into I'm sure nobody on the call wants to hear about the 3 bars we had in Kutztown. So
or how we got into them.
yeah, right. So we'll start with, I know you have an interesting story about how you made your way to Wawa in this position. Do you want to share that with the group?
Sure. Yeah, so I tell this story, I've told this story a lot over the last 2.5 years at Wawa because I say I must have a guardian angel somewhere who was looking out for me. So I was at Target. I'd been at Target for 14 years. I started in Boston and moved 5 times across the country from Ohio to New York to Texas and back to Philadelphia. Was very, very happy. As you know, it's an amazing brand. I would not be the leader I am today if it wasn't for Target. Their leadership development and their HR and how they ingrain HR into everything they do, taught me everything I know, and really plan to retire there. People would often ask me what I would do next, and I always said it would have to be a very unique opportunity for me to ever leave Target, that it would have to be something really mind-blowing because I was super happy there. And I was on a project and I was asked to benchmark other organizations. We were looking at our customer service framework within our stores, and I, of course, was benchmarking and bringing back information, and I had been stalking Wawa for about 6 months. I grew up in New Jersey, so I knew Wawa, but I was really trying to figure out what was their customer service framework, how did they train, what did it look like, why are these people so happy all the time, you know, and could not figure it out, but did definitely confirm how happy they were, and their culture was so strong. In the middle of that, I got a call from a recruiter. I had not answered a recruiting call in 14 years, and this person was incredibly persistent, from Spencer Stewart, and she got me to answer one day, and she told me it was obviously the Chief People Officer job, which was very interesting, and then Wawa, which was very, very interesting, and she topped it off by telling me that my office would be 12 miles from my house, and that I didn't even have to move. And so I thought, well, that's pretty amazing. That's not something I could not take advantage of, or at least have a conversation. So I came in, I met the amazing people here, and it took me a while. We were in conversations for almost 3 months. It was a really, really big decision for me to leave an organization like Target, but I have not looked back. It has delivered everything that they told me it would deliver, and it's been just an amazing experience to be here.
Fantastic.
So that's how I got to Wawa.
That's great. Great story. We love Spencer Stewart. Fantastic firm.
Yep.
And so I think that obviously, you know, we all know Wawa is the cult brand of our area, but I don't know that we all know sort of like all the demographics. So do you want to give us kind of the landscape of what your department and how many employees and how many different states and sort of like the pre-COVID numbers,
Sure.
I guess?
Yes. So yeah, people don't often realize because of our brand and the cultness of our brand that we actually are in 6 states. So we are in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and Florida. We have the most stores actually in New Jersey, which people don't often realize. Pennsylvania is a close second, and Florida is our third. We opened our 200th store in Florida this past December, and that is in a 7-year period. We opened over 200 stores in Florida. We're over that now. We've opened a few more. So we have about 37,000 associates. So 36-ish of those, or a little less than 36 of those, are in stores, and we have about 1,200 people in our corporate office. So we are lean and mean when it comes to our corporate staff, and we are really focused on ensuring that you know, we are there to support our associates and everything that we do. You know, at Target, I felt that as well, but it's really very, very different at Wawa. So you know, our culture begins everything we do and every conversation, which was something I really had to learn. I think at Target they have a strong culture, but business always started the conversation. And so that was an adjustment for me. We always start with the culture and our values and what is the right thing to do here. And then we back into making sure that we can do it in a way that supports our customers and our business and our brand as well. When we talk about the company, we talk about it in culture, brand, and business, and in that order. And we do that very purposefully because we really believe that you know, the purpose of the organization is to fulfill lives every day. And that is, we really work to fulfill lives so we can run our business, not run our business, right? So it's just a super interesting and very, very different. It took me almost a year to really understand and get it down. I spent my first year doing a listening tour, going across the company and just really trying to understand what they meant by culture, and what that, you know, they got the scary external HR person. So making sure that I was doing the things they wanted me to do. So yeah, we will probably, if things go well, you know, we're over 900 stores right now. And so we'll hit 1,000 sometime early next year.
Got it. And so obviously, you know, COVID. So we wanted to kind of talk about when you started talking about that, what you started preparing for, how it's affected the business, what the business looks like today. And then of course, you know, talking about sort of like the reopening, re-entry, and sort of the plan for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually on vacation when we first sort of started bubbling up, and immediately came back, and we have a crisis team. We call it the V team. So as you may or may not know, geese fly in V formation to support each other. So that's a very common thing here at Wawa. We are, the goose is our sort of mascot or person, and so we call it the V team. It's really our crisis team. And so it's a cross-functional team that comes together to lead us through any of these types of situations. And so the crisis team came together to really understand what was happening. We started obviously with our values and culture and said, what do we need to do starting there? But we took great guidance and we stayed really close to the CDC and to government agencies. We have a government relations team that was working around the clock to understand what was happening abroad, what was happening here. And so we made really clear decisions from day one that we would follow our values first. And then we would follow along very closely with the guidelines that the CDC and or the World Health Organization or the state governments gave us. So we tried to stay really close to that, but we knew very quickly that we were going to have to do some things to take care of our associates to make sure that they were safe, that our customers were safe. We were, we are designated as an essential provider. And so I would say almost every night at about 9 o'clock, my boss and I would have the conversation to say, are we doing the right thing to keep our stores open? And we would debate that quite heavily for an hour or so, and really realize that as an essential provider, we had a responsibility to our first responders and to our healthcare providers to be open for them. And so we have not permanently closed any stores since this began. We are closing when we have incidents and cleaning. We're closing overnight for a couple of hours to clean, and we're doing those kinds of things. But we quickly put a team together and started with our values about, we have to fulfill lives, and as an essential provider, that means we needed to do everything in our power to stay open when it was safe to stay open. And so we took a lot of different actions. Obviously we quickly put in social distancing guidelines in the stores. Our teams just did such an amazing job of moving so fast. We are in the process before this happened of kind of really focusing on agility within Wawa and teaching people to be more agile. And this certainly brought that to life for us, and we are super proud. We got plastic shields for our registers. We got name tag enhancements for the 6 feet social distancing on our screens in the stores, all of that. We also enhanced our cleaning procedures, which are already pretty stringent, but we enhanced them even farther. We got masks, obviously, for our folks. We implemented temperature checks. We have an associate health check already. When an associate comes in to clock in, we enhance that by asking the questions that the CDC recommended, and then also doing temperature checks for every associate. And then we knew that we had associates that we had to do something more for them. And one of our core values, and our first core value, is valuing people. And so we quickly implemented a $3 appreciation pay for any associate who continued to be able to work in our stores. We also implemented a 2-week average hours PTO bank for every single associate, regardless of if they're working or not. That was both to help them if they couldn't come to work, but also we're allowing them to keep that through 2021 in recognition of the work that they're doing. We enhanced our benefits, so we are plugging the hole so people don't lose their benefit eligibility regardless of the hours that they're working. And we also implemented care at work, which was something we had been working on getting up and running, as well as enhancing our teledoc. We opened it up to all associates, including telehealth. We enhanced our associate free shorty in every shift, enhanced our menu of what they could get at a discount, a lot of those kinds of things. So, we really moved very, very quickly to make sure, and whenever something changed from the guideline, we changed quickly with the guideline. We also stayed very close to benchmarking. So I'm sure we watched a lot of companies, some of your companies out there and things, and we were not shy in stealing whatever anybody else was doing and getting it in as quickly as we could. So thank you to all of you that we've been watching, because it's been super helpful to see what others are doing. And now we're, to your point, we're in the re-entry period, right? So our business has, obviously been heavily impacted. And so, in true Wawa fashion, we've been following our values. We're still basically fully employed. And so we've not furloughed or laid off any associates. We're trying to manage our labor based on call-ins and things like that, but we have not furloughed or laid off any associates. And our goal is to not. Wawa's never had a layoff in this 55 years in existence. And so I pray every night that it will not be while I'm sitting in this seat, if we cannot all avoid that. So I also am on our finance committee at the moment, going through every line of every dollar of our P&L and capital and expense and everything else, making sure that we can stay as liquid as possible for the next at least 6 to 12 months, so that we can sustain keeping our associates employed and keeping them safe and working and fulfilling the lives of those who need us in the community. So that's a lot. I mean, I'll stop there. We've done a ton of those types of things, and we're continuing now to look at how do we come back. So our business has been down, depending on the state and area, it probably around 40 to 60%, depending on the day or place. And so we've had to really focus on how do we continue to keep our folks employed, but then also continue to think about how to ramp some of that up. So we had delivery in a small part of our markets. We ramped that up. We now have delivery covering 95% of our footprint. And so that has been super helpful to allow people and get delivery. We also expanded our 3PLs to include, we have DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, and I'm blanking on the fourth one we just added. So trying to really get, have people be able to get to Wawa or get Wawa to them as quickly as possible. And we also are doing a ton of community work. So we have a 401(c) foundation at Wawa, and they have been working diligently with the community. And so they're leading the way. We focus on health, hunger, and everyday heroes. And so right now we've been very focused on the hunger and the everyday heroes. So we are working and providing 25,000 box lunches to those in our communities. We are honoring our frontline workers with free coffee, and also delivering catering to a lot of the hospitals and places like that. So our foundation has been super busy trying to support the community and ensure that we continue that part, which has been a big part of our culture for a really long time. So
That's great.
So I'll stop there. That's a lot of what we've been doing. The reentry is harder because nobody knows. I wish I had the answer of when and how this is all going to happen. So we're basically working to do every possible scenario you can imagine, and have a plan for that to be able to react as quickly as possible.
Yeah, a lot of pivoting. Is everybody coming to the corporate office as well?
No, so we asked everyone to stay home. I think it was starting March 16th. So we haven't had anyone in our corporate office since March 16th. Small group, we have about 50 people roughly who come in on a daily basis. We have implemented temperature checks, social distancing, as well as masks. So those are required in all our offices. We have the committee, the people committee, or the return to work committee, or I should say return to office because they've been working, but return to office committee is working right now from a facilities perspective, because clearly we'll have to work differently. And so all of the protocols around safety, what do we do about our cafeteria, limiting people in conference rooms, all of those kind of things. We've been measuring our desks and cubicles to ensure that they're 6 feet apart, so that we can think about how to make sure we can do that. And then from a people side, we are looking at bringing people back slowly, probably not for at least when the governor says we can come back, but we'll probably bring them back in stages over at least 6 to 8 weeks. And so there'll be small groups coming back. We don't want people to get sick, and we don't need folks to be here. We've been, one great learning out of this for Wawa is we have not seen productivity or efficiency fall at all with our folks being at home. Our technology has worked really well, which we were a little worried about, but worked really great. And people, are anxious to get back, but also at the same time, obviously nervous and have childcare and all of those types of issues. So we plan to bring people back very slowly when we move into the yellow zone and then the green. So it'll be a while before they're all back.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, some people are talking about, sort of the long-term shifts in the way we do business and the way we think about how we do business and what this has taught us. Has Wawa considered that in terms of, have you always been in an environment that has offered, work from home and flexibility? Have you considered, how this might shift people's, the way they think about work? Is Wawa thinking about that differently?
Yes, actually, so about 4 weeks ago, as we sort of got most of the crisis things in place and we're sort of watching it, we put together multiple committees of cross-functional teams to address different things. So we have a return to the office committee, we have some other, but one of the committees is our consumer changes, and one of our committees is a people committee. So the consumer changes is really about how is our customer going to react out of this? So for those of you that have been Wawa, know Wawa, one of the changes we had to make in stores was we went to self-serve coffee, or full-serve coffee, not self-serve coffee. And that is a big part of who Wawa is. So going to that coffee bar and getting your coffee and talking to your neighbors and making your own coffee, and that kind of being able to get in really fast and get out really fast. So that is a huge challenge for our stores right now, because as the traffic starts to ramp up, we're going to be really challenged to be able to do full serve coffee. And so we're having to figure out, what do we do? We're also trying to figure out, the lids, normally the lids are there and you can touch them, and the straws and the packets. And so, all these little things that you might not think about that are going to be, really questions for our customers in the future. We're actually testing a drive up in one of our stores in New Jersey. We have no drive-throughs or anything like that at Wawa, but it's going to be something we probably need to have in the future. And then also, to your point, on the corporate side, when people start looking at more telecommuting, when I think many companies are seeing that this works, and I know the research has always said that, but for us, that's a less positive on the business side, because all those people not driving to work in the morning to get their coffee and their breakfast sandwich and things like that. So how do we ramp up either curbside pickup we're working on, or obviously delivery. So yes, there's a huge team right now really focused in on and working with a lot of different outside firms around what do we believe the consumer behavior will be in our stores, and how do we adjust to that. We also are creating what we're calling the clean team, or a clean group. And so we're allocating certain hours within the store to enhance our cleaning even more. We had really robust, but that will be something customers will be looking for and needs to be more visible to them. On the corporate side, we have always had a very flexible environment, but not necessarily as, I would say, encouraging of working from home. And a lot of that is because we have such a family environment. I thought Target had a lot of family members that worked at Target. I've never seen anything. Wawa has, I think, 4 people in my own team, all are related to 5 other people at Wawa. So it's a very community, and it's a very collaborative place. And so I think it was always sort of a, it wasn't sort of frowned upon. It just was people wanted to be here, wanted to be with each other, and also questioned the ability to be really productive at home. This has certainly proven not to be the case. And so we've had people be really, really creative and being able to collaborate. We have a digital transformation going on, and we have a digital team that's learned to do a lot of their sprints and some of the Scrum Master, led P&Is and things like that are happening through Skype and through Teams and stuff like that, which we wouldn't have thought was possible before. So I definitely think part of the people committee right now is working on, what does this look like for us? What does telecommuting and flexible work arrangements really look like, and how do we solidify that? We're doing a survey of all of our associates in corporate actually this week to get their feel and their understanding and their opinion on that, and also their level of feeling of how productive or efficient they have been. So we have a ton of work going on around that area, and there will be significant changes for sure, both on the corporate and the store side.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that, the traffic and the morning coffee, because even on days when I work from home, I still go out and get Wawa coffee. So for our household, that doesn't change much.
Well, I hear that. Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that.
And we sort of talked about this a little bit earlier in the week as well, the cult brand around Wawa. And of course, I was doing a little, Googling and research leading up to this call. And I saw, people have Wawa tattoos, and people got married inside of Wawas. And, do you talk about that a lot? I mean, I know you're an HR person, not a branding person, but it's just so fascinating to me in terms of this cult. I can't figure out why somebody would get married inside of Wawa. I love Wawa. I just can't figure that out.
It's interesting. We do, well, I don't know if we talk about it a lot. It was very fascinating to me when I came here, because I assumed that Wawa fostered that and drove that from a marketing perspective, and it was sort of the brand thing and all of that. And it's really not. I mean, it is very much it's who we are. We have one of our core sayings is, we're neighbors serving neighbors. And that is very, very true in our stores, right? Our associates are serving their family, their friends, their neighbors, their schoolmates, their teachers. And so it creates this environment in the store of just a feeling of knowing each other and being part of each other's lives. And many of our, I always say, you might go to Target 3 times a week, but you'll go to Wawa 3 times a day. And that's sort of the difference. You get to know the people that are serving you. They get to know you. And then on top of it, we are a privately owned organization. We're an ESOP. So our associates are owners, and they feel that ownership and they feel that responsibility to be, serving their customers and taking care of their customers. So we have so many stories that come out of our stores where our associates just going above and beyond to take care of their associates. And a lot of that comes to us. It's not really driven by us. Even some of the celebrity stuff, sometimes like people will send us something that we're like, oh, we didn't know that happened, and Tina Fey with the Super Bowl, and doing, we found that out because she went to a store in New Jersey and ordered a bunch of hoagies and told them she was going to be on SNL, right? And so it's just super interesting. It's very organic, but it comes from our culture. It comes from that sense of, one of our core foundations is servant leadership. And, I've heard that term a lot before and people talk about that term, but, from our original founder, Graham Wood, back many years ago, to Dick Wood, who's was our second CEO and is now our chairman of our board, to Howard Stokel, and now to Chris Geisens as our CEO, they really live that. I mean, the first thing Chris said to me in my interview was, what you have to realize coming to Wawa is the most important people in this entire organization are running our registers, and they will always come first. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow. And it's true, right? It is really true. And so I think it just comes from that. Our associates feel that, they feel the ownership, they feel that, and they create the brand, they create the connections.
That's amazing.
I wish I could tell you it was a brilliant marketing strategy, but
Well, I'm just thinking about your HR department working around the clock, and your marketing department just kicking their feet up, just like the brand takes care of itself. There's nothing for us to do here. It's just handled.
Well, I'm not sure my CMO would agree with that.
So I guess one last interesting story. Tell us about the sheets, because we saw that you did something interesting with sheets, which we thought was your arch nemesis, but not true, right?
No, it's such an interesting story. So I had never heard of sheets, obviously, because I'm a New Jersey, Pennsylvania girl. And so I just went to my first sheets 3 months ago. So it's interesting. So we have a long history of a relationship with sheets, and a very close relationship. Their founder actually was on the board of Wawa for a while. So Dick Wood, who is our chairman of the board, and their founder actually were very close, and shared a lot and collaborated a lot. And their present CEO, Joe Sheets and Chris Geisens, I think they text daily, probably based on the texts I get on the things that are happening at Sheets. So we actually have a really close relationship. And what's interesting to me as sort of an outsider coming in is it's a healthy competition, but it is at the same time very respectful. So, I always say to my boss, why don't we go to Pittsburgh? And he's like, that's Sheets country, right? We have plenty of other places we can go, right? Kind of thing. So it's sort of that healthy competition that we, want to make sure that we're staying ahead and things like that. But the rivalry really comes from our customers and their customers, which is super fascinating, right? And that comes from, they're very similar, right? They're privately owned. They have a really strong culture, they're in their communities. And so we're very similar in that way. And so our customers feel that, and they feel that rivalry similar to, rival football teams, that kind of thing. They feel that, and they really drive that more than the organizations do themselves.
Well, I'm watching Shelly Azen smile in the corner there because she's a Pittsburgh girl, so she's probably a Sheets, person herself. She probably gets schmuffins in the morning.
I have to say one of the only converts I have is to Wawa, and that's true, Margaret. Not just because you're on the call, I promise you.
Not the Eagles?
Not the Eagles.
Okay.
Never.
Well, that's very interesting. We have a long-standing relationship with the Eagles, but we got very upset people here in Philadelphia when we became a sponsor of the Ravens. But we tried to tell them we have stores there too, and we have customers there too. So we have to spread the love. But we are embedded with the Eagles as an organization for sure.
No, you hear that, Shelly?
All right. Listen, I went to a Jacksonville Steelers game recently, and I went to Wawa to get tailgating food. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Love it.
True story.
Oh gosh. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing some of your story. Now, I'm not the tech person, so I'm sure people have some interesting questions for you if you have a little more time for us. Shelley, are you
Sure.
the tech person?
I don't know, either me or Dylan, but I think you can just go take yourself off of mute, I think, right, Dylan? And ask a question.
that's
Maybe you
right.
could,
Yeah, 90 questions at once.
identify yourself first, and we'll do the best we can here to crowd control.
Yeah.
I actually have a statement and a question, Margaret. It's Shelley. I just want to say, first of all, I think we all appreciate the brand, as Michael and I were just kidding about, of course. I live alone, and the last 3 weekends, I have met my closest girlfriends on a Sunday morning for coffee at Wawa. We've parked around the back, got coffee, came around the back, social distance, and had like an hour-long conversation and had coffee. And it's been the most normal part of my week. So I just wanted to say thank you. And people have been so wonderful, despite not being able to get my own coffee. Everyone's been very gracious. Like, is this enough creamer, or do you want a little bit more? Not so much. So it's been really wonderful. So thank you. I guess my question for you, as a leader of an organization, when you think about crisis management and just being agile, what's been your biggest lesson over the last 8 weeks as a leader?
Well, I would say a couple of things. For my own team, I thank God every day that I did a reorganization of my team last year. So when I came in, the HR team was very much structured within centers of excellence, but not really appropriately, I would say, and had no embedded business partners in the business, and it was not organized correctly. And so we went through a reorganization that, thank God, because we had embedded business partners, everybody in the right seat, everybody in the right role, clear on the expectations, and we were able to execute super fast. And so it was key. I also have a great team. And so can honestly say, for the first time in my career, I don't have one weak link on my entire team. They are really strong and focused and dedicated to Wawa. And so, it was very easy for me to really lead and not have to get into the weeds or deep, because I had really, really strong people delivering great work. So that, I think, would be the first thing. I would say the second is the crisis team that we put together as a cross-functional team, and they all knew their own roles. And so we came together, we made decisions together, but then we divided and conquered, and really trusted each other to own and deliver what you said you would own and deliver in the time that you said, and if not, to communicate. And we kept our leadership team up to date every night. So we had a nightly call with the leadership team to update them and make sure. So a lot of the communication was key. Having the right people in the seats and capable to be able to deliver. My boss on March 11th, I think, sent out an email to the leadership team with his guiding principles of how we would endure through this crisis. The first one, I don't know if you'll kill me for sharing this, but his first one was that we would follow our values. And in the tradition of 200 years at Wawa, we would always follow our values first. The second was there's no hierarchy in this, and that if you have an opinion or a disagreement, it's your responsibility to voice that and to bring it forward, whether people agree or not. And thirdly was to take care of each other. And so those were really, obviously all of us took those really to heart and followed those through. So I think the right people able to do the jobs you need them to do, clear on communication, clear on expectations, and then trusting people to execute.
All right, thank you. Who else has a question?
I actually have a question or a comment. So I saw, I think it was your chief marketing officer present at an event a couple of years ago, right before you guys opened in Florida. And this is more of a comment. I thought it was really fascinating. People lined up outside of the stores in Wawa like Disney World was opening. And I just thought it was really interesting that the brand carried so far. People had signs, like whole families were lined up, waiting in line to get into the first Wawa that opened in Florida. So yes, I think there's a brand locally that we all know, and you know, it's sort of, but how did it get to Florida so quickly?
They're all transplants.
They're
all transplants.
So it's interesting you know, obviously they opened 7 years ago, so that was prior to me. But what I've learned that they did, which was really brilliant, right? So first they picked Florida, right? So think about that. We're in Virginia, and then we jumped over to Florida. And that was very purposeful. One, to I think Michael's point, you know, there's a lot of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Florida people in Florida. And so there's a lot of folks down there that already know the brand. So I think that is one. Number two is they actually transferred leaders down to open stores. And so many of the first round of stores that were opened, even down to some hourly associates and things like that, they transferred down there to bring the brand and the culture to ensure that we opened it that way. And an interesting story, you know, when we first opened one area, I won't name it, but they went down, I wasn't here, but and they just felt like it wasn't the culture, like it was at Wawa, something was wrong. And they removed the leader, and they put a long-term 20-year Wawa leader down there. And I was down there a few months ago, and it bleeds Wawa and goose blood and everything else, right? And so it is very much their strategy of how they went about it. One, they picked the right place, and two, they put the right leaders there, and have intensive training. One of the things I say about Wawa is, you know, once you become our part of family, you're part of our family. But if you really are, how would I say, not cultural fit, or don't really have the same values and are in a servant leadership, the flock will push you out. And that's not necessarily from a firing, but it's difficult to survive if you don't believe in our values and how we operate in a servant leadership mentality. So I think they did a beautiful job of bringing the right people down there, and they opened in the right market.
Hi, Margaret. It's Allie Brody. Just a quick question about the goose, because I moved to the Northeast in 2002, so I guess I'm kind of a newbie to Wawa. What is the history of, I mean, I know what the story of geese, but when did the goose become part of the Wawa family and part of the logo, since I, again, just moved here in 2002?
Sure. So Graham Wood was the original founder of Wawa, and actually the Wood family has a long history, goes back 200 years in this area in Media, PA. Actually, Dick Wood's father was one of the original sort of got CHOP up and running and funded, and has been on the board, and Dick was the chairman of the board up until this year, and Chris is now the chairman of the board. So they have a long history in this area. They were in industrial goods and manufacturing and all those kind of things. And when the grocery stores started opening up and things like that, he had a dairy farm. They used to deliver milk. And then when these grocery stores started opening, and he realized people weren't going to get milk on their doorstep anymore, that, you know, he was smart enough to realize, and he opened the first Wawa and started this trend. And Wawa comes from, and I can never say this word, but Lenape Indian word for goose. So it actually means goose. And Media is actually called Wawa, PA. And Wawa, PA, and where our office is today, if you ever come to our office, the front of our office is the original home of Graham Wood's parents. And this was where they lived and grew up. Multiple homes around here are all owned by Wood family descendants, and so they have a long history here. So Wawa is the Indian word for goose, and the home and where they grew up was in Wawa, PA. And so when he opened it, it just sort of became their sort of mascot, I guess you would say. And then it started beginning in the culture. If you research geese, they're very interesting creatures. They fly in flocks, and they fly in V formations, which is very much sort of how much you know about servant leadership. But, you know, the goose in the front, or the goose in the front, when that goose gets tired, they fall to the back and someone comes forward, and they fly in a V because it's the most efficient way for them to all get airspeed and to go farther, longer. And so they support each other by ensuring that V stays, and that different people come to the front, or different geese come to the front, depending on their, you know, level of energy and things like that. And so it's a core part of our leadership around servant leadership and flying in V formation and having goose blood to support and collaborate to make sure that we deliver on our purpose.
I love that.
Thank you. Great story.
Yeah.
Who else has a question?
I have a quick question. This is Cindy Battaglia. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I was late. I had some technical difficulties. I grew up in Chadds Ford, so I am a Wawa baby. I mean, every time you go down Route 1, the huge farms that have gotten bigger and bigger, and it's always been just, I remember just it being clean and pristine, just the farms themselves, the buildings, just this majestic. I know that sounds weird, but really that's what it looked like. I remember, from when I was 10 driving past those buildings. Are those farms still there in Chadds Ford? Or I heard you mention media, that media being the whole corporate and Chadds Ford being the farms, or am I mixing up the two?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. What I will say is that the Wood family owns this huge portion of Route 1 where our headquarters is. And so I believe 2 years ago, we originally were in the foundation building, and we had our Wawa University building where we do all of our training.
Right.
We were in multiple different buildings. So they actually built our headquarters around the family home, and the family home is now a museum. And so we have our headquarters there. There are multiple properties behind that are owned by families. We just recently bought Fred Wood's house, and we're actually turning it into the Graham Wood Center for Servant Leadership, where we will be creating servant leadership content, first for Wawa, to be able to drive that further through the organization and enhance it, and then potentially in the future to be able to allow others to come and learn about the history of Wawa servant leadership and potentially classes there. So I'm not sure about the farms and Chadds Ford. I mean, I do know down from us, a lot of that land is now being taken up. They're putting in a train station that's to be there. So, but I honestly, I'm not sure about the farms.
Okay, just curious. That's all. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Margaret, this is Lorraine Serra from Iron Hill Brewery and Restaurant. First, I do also have a Wawa story, and that is that when my kids come home from college, they're like, we have to go to Wawa. And I'm like, okay, but we're near Philly, all these, crazy, amazing restaurants. No, I want to go to Wawa. So it's great. But what I wanted to ask you is, you seem to have a really inclusive culture. And I wonder if you do after action reviews with your teams, and whether you've started those already, or do you wait until after the crisis has passed?
Yeah, so we haven't done them yet. We've talked about them, the crisis team in particular. So we were meeting 3 times a day, and then we moved down to 2, and now we're once a day. We're talking about moving down to a few times a week, but we haven't yet kind of taken a moment. We started to have the conversation the other day, and I think everyone sort of looked at each other and said, it's too soon. I'm not ready. We're still kind of in the thick of it, because we still do obviously have a lot going on, and especially in New Jersey. We're hardest hit in New Jersey, as I think a lot are. Most of our cases are in New Jersey. We're opening and closing stores pretty frequently in New Jersey. So I think we're still too in the thick of it at the moment to do that, but we do. Our crisis team runs tabletop exercises 3 times a year. And so unfortunately we didn't do this one, but we do a food safety one. We've done an active shooting one. We'll do, a supply chain, breakdown and things like that. So we do those 3 times a year to kind of test our folks and see how we respond. So we will absolutely do a debrief and learning. We asked everyone on day 1 to make sure that they were keeping a good log of their thoughts and things that we could do differently and do better as we go through this. So we will do a debrief, but I think it's a little too soon. We're unfortunately, it's a little bit too much in the thick of it. I think one of the things for us is we're still open. And so we're closing our stores only for a couple hours from 2 to about 3 a.m. or 2 to 3:30, 4, depending on the store, to clean. But other than that, we're still open. And so we're trying to stay focused on that right now.
Thanks.
Great. We're getting close to time. Shelley?
If there are no other questions specifically for Margaret or Wawa, any other questions for the rest of the group anybody wants to pose?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about Vicky's glass of wine anymore, so Allie took care of that for me.
Well, I just want to say, last week I noted that we had heard 2 speakers in a row talking about taking advantage of, air quotes, downtime to make some systems upgrades. I think what we've heard from 3 weeks in a row now about how companies are taking care of their employees by paying their full benefit contributions, expanding teledoc services, as Margaret mentioned. I know Lorraine mentioned last week, and forgive me, Lorraine, I won't get the word right, but you have sort of this in-store sort of debit card that you're funding so people can continue to buy meals at Iron Hill. So I just feel like we keep hearing the same theme of employers going above and beyond to take care of employees, which has been a great thing to hear. So I just wanted to call that out. I think that's something that we can all learn from, and hopefully we're doing the same thing for our organizations. Yeah.
It's great. Fantastic.
Anybody else have any other questions? Thoughts? Words of wisdom for the rest of us?
Stay
Thank you
safe.
so much, Margaret, for sharing your story of our beloved Wawa. And hopefully we're back up and running here soon.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. So I hope you all and your family stay safe, social distance, wear your mask. And as I keep telling my team, this too will pass and we will get through it stronger on the other side. So
I believe that. Thank you.
thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Thanks,
HR.
everyone.
What?
Thank
Happy
you,
Wednesday.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.